Hello, welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, June 21st. Hopefully everybody's having a day so far and a good rest of their day yesterday. We've got a lot to get into. Today was a good night last night for the New York Yankees. They finally get a win. They finally break what felt like forever, but finally broke a long 4-game losing streak where there was a lot of lows, a lot of disappointing games. They go into Boston and get swept, and just overall frustrating, but they snapped that last night. Garrett Cole was great, 7 1/3 strong. They get the win 3-1. Was nice to see, McKinney with a big homer. Was nice to see some other guys contribute in the lineup. Rizzo looked good, 3 for 4. With 2 doubles and a single. He had a very good night last night, so you hope that's the start of something for Rizzo, who's been, just flat out really bad recently. So you hope that's the start for Anthony Rizzo of a new streak or a new hot stretch. Again, we kind of forget about Anthony Rizzo. This was a guy that was batting over 300 about a month ago before he went on this elongated slump, and he's now all the way down into the 360s. This was a guy that was up in the I think it was 311 at one point, and he's now all the way in the 260s. He dropped about 50 points batting average over the last month. So it hasn't been good. Last night, though, he stepped up in a big way, and you hope that's the start of, more of the Anthony Rizzo we saw last night was the Anthony Rizzo we saw throughout the month of April and into May. But ever since that Tatis injury, he hasn't been the same. So you hope we get the May version of Anthony Rizzo opposed to the June version of Anthony Rizzo and the Aaron Judge being out Anthony Rizzo, which he hasn't done a very good job. But last night was good for him. It was a good win for the Yankees. Again, I rant, they win. I'm okay with that. I like to be wrong with that kind of stuff. I like to rant and then for the teams to win. I don't like to rant and have them keep losing. I like to rant about a team if I need to, and then they go out and win, and I'm okay with that. And they did that last night. So a good win yesterday for the Yankees. Tough one, obviously, for the Mets. They're playing right now as well. Final gave them a 3-game set in Houston. Rubber game of the 3-game set. So a tough loss last night for the Mets, where Scherzer was so good in Game 1. Verlander was all right last night. But obviously the Mets couldn't pull it out, and they took a tough loss. And again, a team that they haven't been able to build any type of consistency. And last night's another example. You have your ace go 8 innings on Tuesday. Or Monday. You get a vintage Max Scherzer performance. You go out there last night, and it was rough. It wasn't what you wanted. It wasn't what you needed. And it's one of those things, consistency with this Met team. It's been so hard to come by, where there's nights they go out there, win, 2 games in a row, look great doing it, get some big performances, and then boom, they can't keep that consistency. So last night definitely showed that yet again. So Yankees tonight, obviously Mets going on right now. We've got 2 topics to get into here on the program. We're going to start things off talking a little bit of basketball. The NBA draft is tomorrow night in Brooklyn, New York at the Barclays Center, home of the Brooklyn Nets, obviously, and there was a lot of excitement, I think, around both teams, not so much going into the draft, because the Knicks currently actually don't have a draft pick. The first time since 2016, the Knicks don't have a pick. So tomorrow night will probably be a quiet night for them, but this is kind of the start of the offseason. The NBA draft is kind of the official kickoff to the offseason, unlike, the NFL and some other sports where, specifically like the NFL, where the draft obviously all the way in April, the NBA, kind of the draft is the kickoff to the NBA offseason. You get the draft, you get some draft day trades that occur. We'll see if we get any of those tomorrow. We're already starting to see some happen right now. And then obviously, into July and stuff, so when you get into the summer and you get the free agency and any other big trades. But this is kind of the start of the whole offseason process. So we're going to give you my outlook on the Nets and the Knicks, what they should do, what they can do, because as much as both teams are kind of on a different path, they can definitely have similar offseason in terms of making that another big acquisition on both the Nets and the Knicks side of things. So we'll get into that. I also want to get into, it's been a topic of conversation, what is a realistic expectation this year for the New York Jets as we sit here in June, as we sit here waiting for training camp to begin? Now that Rodgers has been here, all signs have been great. What is a realistic bottom of the line, like gotta have it? What is a realistic must-have for the New York Jets in terms of what should be the expectation, the borderline, just the expectation for this team moving forward? Like going into this year, obviously you have goals and Super Bowl and all that stuff, but what should just be the expectation outside of obviously Super Bowl and everything like that? So we'll get into that as well later on, talking a little bit of Jets to close things out. And obviously we'll get you ready for the Yankees-Mariners game 2 of the 3 game set tonight. Johnny Brito on the mound for the Yankees, Luis Castillo on the mound for Seattle. I don't love our chances, but you hope you can find a way to get the win. Get two straight, find a way, win the series, go for the sweep tomorrow. Just got to chip away, take it one game at a time at this point in the season. So we'll get to that stuff later on. But we'll start off today with the Knicks and the Nets. So as I mentioned, again, tonight or tomorrow night's going to be interesting because the Knicks don't have a draft pick. As I mentioned to open up the show, it's the first time since 2016 that the New York Knicks won't have a draft pick in the 58 selections that will be made tomorrow night through the 2 rounds of the NBA draft. So it's going to be an interesting night for New York Knicks fans. Usually every year, Knicks fans are looking forward to the draft. Usually every year they're always like, oh, they're in the draft lottery, top 5 pick. RJ Barrett, the Zion, Williamson sweepstakes that obviously everybody was all involved in. And it ended up turning out to be RJ Barrett instead of Zion with the number 3 overall pick. But all of that being said, tomorrow night will be interesting because obviously you have Victor Wembanyama, who, if that's how you pronounce his name, you have Wemby, probably going to go to the Spurs. He's the unanimous number 1 overall pick. I mean, this is a guy that if the Spurs are going to take him. He's going to the Spurs. How the rest of the draft, plays out will be interesting. How the rest of the draft will play out for the Brooklyn Nets will be interesting. But as I mentioned, this is kind of the start of the offseason for the NBA. Again, you have the draft tonight. You have free agency starting here within the next couple weeks as you get into July. Then you get all the trades. I'm sure, the NBA, it's basically like a TV show. You'll get guys that are going to ask out, and create all this drama, and you're going to get, maybe one or two superstars ask out, or you're going to get a rumor about a superstar or two that says they don't like where they're at, they would like to move on, and all that stuff. So I'm sure you're going to get some drama as well, but tomorrow night is kind of how things start. And it's interesting when you look at the 2 New York basketball teams, where this year, when you look back on it, was a wild, wild season for both New York basketball teams, both the Nets and obviously the Knicks. Now, again, the Knicks had a lot more success than the Nets. They got to the second round. They took care of business of Cleveland and Donovan Mitchell in the first round. They obviously got to the second round, lost to the Heat, who ended up going all the way to the NBA Finals, and as we all know, lost to the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and the great roster that they've got over there in Denver. And all that great stuff happened for the Knicks. They got to the playoffs, all that good stuff. Made it run, were competitive, good. The Nets season took a wild turn. You went into last year and you're like, all right, Jalen Brunson for the Knicks. You're hoping that they can get into the playoffs, at least be a competent, solid, good, competitive basketball team. You look at the Nets and you say, hey, you got Kevin Durant, you got Kyrie Irving. This has got to be our year. You don't expect this marriage to last too much longer in terms of you got to win a championship soon. You're already 2 years in. You've got to find a way to win a championship. And, the season took a wild turn for the Nets, where you trade Kevin Durant, you trade Kyrie Irving at the trade deadline. You obviously fired Steve Nash, 5 games into the season. You hired, you bring up Jacques Vaughn. You end up giving him extension, all that good stuff. But it's funny because the way the 2 seasons went, and the Nets ending in a sweep of the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round, where the Sixers were the better team for all 4 games. Let's just tell like it is. We knew that going in. As a Net fan, I hoped we could take a game or two, maybe go out there in game 1 and steal one like we did in 2019. I thought maybe, steal one at home, take it to a 5-6 game series. That's all. I didn't expect us to win that series. Sure, at times we showed some moments of, we were competitive at times. There was definitely some stretches where we were playing really well. You had the Cam Johnson dunk over, over Joel Embiid, but we all knew that series was done. Like, we knew that the Sixers were going to take care of business, and they did. They swept us. Knicks obviously got to the second round. But it's funny because when you look at these 2 teams going into the offseason, they're on different paths. The Knicks right now are probably about a piece or 2 away from legitimately being a championship team. There's a lot of holes on their roster last year. Julius Randle being a big one, and he's been one for the past couple seasons, and they still got to the second round. They still were competitive against the Miami Heat. They had a chance in that series. They missed some opportunities. They could have won a couple more games in that series easily. They looked really good against the Cavaliers team where everybody wanted them to bring in Donovan Mitchell. They've got Jalen Brunson. You feel like now is the time where the New York Knicks should be acquiring the superstars. They should be acquiring that next big piece to pair with Jalen Brunson to get them over the top because they're right there. Now it's about getting them over the top. Now it's about making the next acquisition or two, making that big trade that I think a lot of Knicks fans have been waiting them for the last 2-3 years now. Now you've got a legitimate star in your hands in Jalen Brunson to bring in somebody else to pair with him and legitimately make a deep run at an NBA championship next season. When you look at the Nets, they just got past their superstar era. It didn't work out. You signed Kevin Durant in the summer of 2019. And obviously it didn't work out. You signed Kyrie Irving that year. The first season with Kevin Durant playing, they bring in Harden, they lose in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The second season, they get swept by the Boston Celtics. James Harden gets dealt at the deadline. You bring in Ben Simmons. It's been a disaster from the start. And then last year, you trade the three of them. But still, when you go into this offseason, there's a guy out there that the Nets could potentially look at as a Damian Lillard. So there's a lot of potential this offseason for both teams. When you look at the Nets and you look at the Knicks, to bring in another star. When you look at the Nets, there's a lot of rumors. Woj said it last night on ESPN. The Nets are going to make a push for Damian Lillard. All those rumors are true. They're going to take a look at him. They're definitely going to make a push for him. There's definitely some interest there from Sean Marks and the Nets front office in Damian Lillard, who everybody seems at this point is going to be out of Portland. And for the Knicks, I think a lot of Knicks fans, I would, I'm a Net fan, but I would tend to agree too. Julius Randle's days as a Knick are probably numbered. You probably can only assume they might deal him this offseason. You probably should deal him this offseason for a guy like a Zach LaVine or another star, another player that's an upgrade over Randle, more consistent than Randle. Is it a Karl Anthony Towns? Is it a Damian Lillard? Are you bringing another guard? Again, Lillard being a point guard, and you already got one in Brunson, but do you bring in another high-scoring threat in Damian Lillard? I know it's probably not going to happen, but that's a name to toss around. You got Karl Anthony Towns' name to be interested in. You look at a guy like Zach LaVine, that's probably up there on the top of the list to bring in at the forward spot and replace Julius Randle, which is a huge upgrade. So there's two off seasons here. Although teams are going in different directions, and the Nets, Damian Lillard isn't going to put the Nets over the top. The Nets they'll be competitive this year. With or without Damian Lillard, they'll be competitive. They're probably maybe squeak into the play-in game. With Damian Lillard, I don't know with Damian Lillard if they'll be able to avoid the play-in, but they should be able to get into the play-in without Damian Lillard. The Knicks, on the other hand, they should be a 4 seed, like if they bring in another star. And I know there's some concerns about Tibbs and all that stuff, but all in all, you feel good about where the roster's at, especially with Brunson. So when you look at the Nets, again, like you got Mikal Bridges, which I really like. Again, Cam Johnson, restricted free agent. You bring him back. I loved what he brought last year. I loved what both Suns guys brought last year. The Nets, in my opinion, won the deal for Kevin Durant. They got Mikal Bridges, who I think is a blossoming star. He's developing. And you saw in a bigger role with the Nets last year what he can do. This is a guy that I think developing into a really good, future, legitimate number one on a playoff contender. Like, I truly believe that Mikal Bridges is really heading in that direction of being a legitimate number one, where 2-3 years from now, you're looking at Bridges as a high-end all-star type player. I like what Cam Johnson brings. This team's very good defensively. The one thing this team lacks is the scoring punch. And we talked about that all last year with the Brooklyn Nets. So to be honest with you, for the right price, I wouldn't mind striking a deal for Damian Lillard. I would do it. Not a huge Dinwiddie guy. The point guard spot's been a little bit of an issue for the Nets. Again, Dinwiddie very inconsistent. You really don't know what his future is. Yes, Cam Thomas at the guard spot's not bad either, but, we really haven't gotten a full look at him. I wouldn't necessarily say should be getting all the reps out there at the guard spot. I would go out there and trade for Damian Lillard for the right price. Am I going to give up Mikal Bridges? Am I going to give up a Cam Johnson? No, I'm not going to do that. Nick Claxton, I don't know how. I really don't know if I'm doing that, because if you're telling me we're trading Nick Claxton for Yusuf Nurkic in return and Damian Lillard, I'm not making that move, because I think that is a significant downgrade at the center spot. And to be honest with you, one of the Nets' bigger weaknesses is the center spot, and specifically the depth at that position, which is why I like the potential that the New York Knicks are looking at Derek Lively out of Duke, who worked out for them. And we heard that news today. Center, tall, lanky, was a very good player last year for Duke, showed a lot of improvement as the year went on. He's the guy to look out for. So, you could bring him in as center depth. Again, the Nets this season, outside of Day'Ron Sharpe, their center depth wasn't good. So I wouldn't trade Nick Claxton, bring in Yusuf Nurkic and Damian Lillard, because you're really not getting better at that point. Sure, you're bringing in Lillard, but you're getting a whole lot worse at the center spot. You're getting a whole lot worse, and that's already a weakness as it is. So for the right price, I'd trade for Dame. This team's missing the scoring punch, missing that legitimate playmaker in a way. You get that in Damian Lillard. And I understand people that say, oh, you want this team to develop. You want this team to build through the draft, and I get that. The Nets got 2 first-round picks this year, though. They've got the 21st overall and the 22nd overall. And you're already hearing rumors that they might look to trade them. You can work with that. I mean, you've got 3 picks. You've also got the 51st overall, which is a whole lot less valuable. But you've got picks to trade. You've got a lot of draft capital. I understand you want to use that, but you also have to look at it from the Trailblazer perspective. They're going to want picks. They're going to want draft picks in their return to help build and help rebuild their roster. Sure, they might want a young asset like Cam Thomas, which actually I'm okay with giving up. They might want, maybe they want a Cam Johnson, if the Nets bring him back, obviously a restricted free agent. Do you give him a veteran like a Joe Harris or a Royce O'Neal or somebody like that we've already heard rumors that the Nets are receiving calls on Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal? Do you give up one of those guys? You might have to. But again, this team lacked that big scoring punch. Damian Lillard last year put up 32 a game. So, and again, I don't think this is a move like a lot of people think this is another one of these Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving moves. It's not. It's going to be, first of all, it's a trade. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving are obviously free agents, but Damian Lillard's not going to come in here and carry to an NBA Finals. He's just not that type of player. But you assume where the Nets are at. Again, I said this when the Nets made the trade for Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. They're closer to getting out of this kind of reset than they were when they got into the whole Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett debacle back in, obviously, in the earlier days in Brooklyn. I talked about that, and I said they're closer to competing again, to legitimately being a threat again than they were. And I truly believe that. You have Bridges, you have Cam Johnson, you have Dorian Finney-Smith, you have Nick Claxton. Again, maybe one of those guys has to go over. Do you have to trade a Dorian Finney-Smith? Do you have to give up Nick Claxton? I wouldn't want to give up Nick Claxton. I mean, the only way I'm trading Nick Claxton, and I don't even know if I'd fully do this, it depends on what else you're getting from the Raptors, is if you're trading him for a Pascal Siakam. I am not trading Nick Claxton for a Yusuf Nurkic. But for the right price, I'm fine with striking a trade with the Trailblazers. I'm fine with bringing in Damian Lillard. You look at your lineup and you say Damian Lillard, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and if you hold on to Claxton, Nick Claxton at the center spot, who showed so much development last year. I mean, that is an exciting lineup. And it's a lineup with a lot of youth. And it's a lineup with a legitimate scoring threat at the point guard spot, which we lacked at the end of last year. He's 10 times better than Dinwiddie. We talked about Dinwiddie being this above-average guy in a mid-career year. Damian Lillard put up 32 and 7 last season. This is a guy that can give you 8 assists a game. He can play make. He was top 10 in the NBA last year in assists. He was third in the NBA in points per game. Damian Lillard is one of the better players out there. So I would definitely be fine with it for the right price. Put up 32.2 per game, 7.3 assists, shot at a 46% clip. Give me Damian Lillard for the right price. I take it. I wouldn't say no. Damian Lillard, Mikal Bridges at the guard spot. I mean, the offensive power there. Mikal Bridges solid defensively as well. Cam Johnson, you've got a lot of defense. You're just lacking that scoring threat, and you get it there in Damian Lillard. So I would take that for the for the Brooklyn Nets rather, if they decide to go that route. again, trading Claxton, Siakam, whatever it is, you've already heard they might trade up for a Derek Lively. Do they go out and get a Case and Wallace? All of these are possibilities. I mean, I like Case and Wallace, obviously, from Kentucky. I've talked about him a little bit on this podcast as well. I mean, again, a guy that can shoot at a high clip. I mean, he could shoot easily at a 60% clip when he's on. Could do a little bit of everything, can get to the hoop. Very good at getting to the hoop. Can beat you in many different ways with the three. He's able to drive, able to get to the hoop, able to draw fouls, able to take contact. Case and Wallace is just all around. You continue to develop. He's an all-around offensive threat. And that's got to be the baseline here for the Nets. Not only do they want to get bigs and you want to, upgrade the center spot and the, bigs a little bit more because outside of Claxton, it's bare. You do want to do that, but you also want to bring some scoring in because this team lacked that. They just did. And every team's going to lack it. When you trade Kevin Durant as one of the better scorers of all time, and you trade Kyrie Irving, two guys that can score at a high clip, you're going to lack scoring. I don't care who you get in the return, you are. That's just the way it is. So you try to build that back up. Again, they got the 21st overall pick. They got the 22nd overall pick. Back-to-back picks. Trade one of those. Make a move. Do something like that. Strike a trade. So I'm definitely fine with that. And obviously, they got the 51st overall pick as well. So when you look at the Knicks side of things, and again, I like where the Knicks are at in terms of, just some of their kind of core, like Jalen Brunson. Yeah, I don't know what's going to fully happen with RJ. They probably hold on to RJ Barrett. I know there's some fans out there that are done with him, but you go with RJ Barrett. Mitchell Robinson's going to stick around. You like Emmanuel quickly off the bench. Obviously, Josh Hart, another guy who came on last year and was really, really good. One of the Knicks' better acquisitions at the deadline. I mean, he was a phenomenal asset for the New York Knicks last season after coming over from the deadline. So those are kind of your core guys. Brunson being the biggest one. I mean, you look back on that signing, what a signing by Leon Rose and the Knicks front office to bring in Jalen Brunson and what he was able to do last season. And again, I'm fully on board with every New York Knicks fan. I think everybody would tend to agree, and every Knicks fan feels this way. You got to move on from Julius Randle. It's time to move on from Julius Randle. He's not the number two. Jalen Brunson last year turned into a legitimate number one option for the New York Knicks. And I liked the move when it first went down. I thought it was solid. Again, we saw what he was able to do with Dallas. He had some big games. He had that big playoff game. I believe it was that big playoff game against Utah where he put up, 40 points or whatever the case may be. He showed some signs. He wasn't as good, but he was a number two. He was with Luka. You bring him over. He was still young. He gets an opportunity to be a legitimate number one, which at times was good and a little bit of a concern because you wondered how he would handle it. Would he be able to be the main guy? And he answered all those questions, and he answered them with a big yes. He was able to be the number one guy. He was able to take over that number one role. He was able to just score at a high clip. He was able to be a consistent point guard for the New York Knicks that they've been looking for forever. The Knicks got that last year in Jalen Brunson. Put up 27 a night. Led the team in assists and points and steals. What he was doing on the defensive end was underrated. So now is the time for the Knicks. This is the best roster they've had in a while. Now is the time for the Knicks team to go all in. You've got to bring in another star. The bottom line is Julius Randle, the health is an issue, and not only is the health an issue, the performance is an issue when it comes to Julius Randle. It just is. It's just the bottom line. He can't, the health's an issue, and in big moments, he hasn't been able to step up. Last year in the postseason, and 2 years ago in the postseason as well. When they got there in Tibbs' first year against Atlanta, struggled in the postseason. You got there last year, 16 points per game in the postseason. Also dealt with an ankle injury. He went from 25 a night, which was 13th in the NBA in the regular season, to 16 points per game in the postseason. And part of that could have been the ankle, but that shouldn't be used as an excuse. That's more, you got to stay healthy. He hasn't been able to fully do that at times. I think it's time to move on from Randle. I think it's been too much of this. There's been too much of this. He's not a legitimate number two option for the New York Knicks. So you look at options. Zach LaVine, to me, is probably your best bet to bring in another forward. You trade away Randle. You bring in LaVine. Whatever you decide to do with Obi Toppin, look, again, he showed some promise last year, especially at times in the playoffs. He showed some signs. Again, he's extremely athletic. He's got a lot of speed, got a lot of explosiveness. There's all the tools and attributes there. It's about some of the basic stuff, some of the basic, just the ball and stuff like that. And the playing time, too, with Toppin hasn't been as much as Knicks fans wanted it, and part of that's Tibbs. Tibbs likes to play the veteran guys. He was playing Randall a lot more. Obi Toppin never got that big role. If you roll out a lineup next year that looks something like Brunson, R.J. Barrett, Levine, Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson, if you do decide to trade Julius Randle, I wouldn't be against it. I think there's a lot of potential there with Obi Toppin. Again, you throw IQ off the bench, and, you kind of look at this roster and you like the depth there. Maybe you want to get a little bit deeper on the bench, but all in all, you add another star. Like Zach LaVine is a huge upgrade over Julius Randle. More athletic, overall more talent. You talk about the athleticism, and maybe LaVine isn't quite the player that he once was. Maybe he isn't quite that. I shouldn't even say that. That's not even right. He's still in his prime. But when you look at LaVine and you look at Obi Toppin and you look at the athleticism there, there is a lot of burst. There is a lot of excitement in that Knicks lineup. A lot of athleticism. So, Brunson, RJ Barrett, LaVine, Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson, or do you roll with, Randall, RJ, Brunson, Mitch, and those guys like that? Do you bring in a cat and you roll with a cat? RJ, Mitch, Brunson, do you roll with that? Is Karl-Anthony Towns on your radar? What do you just got to add another star. You got to add another guy. I think to me it's probably Levine's probably your number one option, especially because you probably send Randall over in the deal, and I think it's time to move on from Randall. Jalen Brunson, Zach LaVine punch is a whole lot more lethal than a Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson 1-2 punch. It just is. So, again, Zion. Is he on the radar? Fine. Go out. Trade Randall, get Zion. That's fine, too. You end up with R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson, 2 of the 3 draft picks in the 2019 NBA draft. You end up with both those guys. You want to go ahead and do that? Go ahead and do that, right? So, I believe it was 2019, right? I think it was something. I think it was 2019 draft. Either way, you want to bring in Zion. You want to bring in Dame. Is Obi a part of the starting rotation? There's definitely a lot of questions there, but the Knicks are about a move or two away from legitimately being a legit contender that's not just getting to the second round. We're talking about deep playoff runs for this Knicks team. They're right there, and this is a very important offseason. They can't just sit on their hands and watch everybody make moves, watch the Eastern Conference get better, and just sit back and think that they're okay with the lineup they've got, because it's just not true. That's just not the case. So we'll see. First time since 2016, by the way, they have no draft picks. So it'll be an interesting offseason for the Knicks as well. They're right there. They're right there. What is their next move? To me, it's probably trading Julius Randle. I think you improve doing that already. So, it's funny how the Suns and Wizards move kind of set everything going, because you get that Suns move where you send, Bradley Beal to the Suns, open up the big 3 with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and now you kind of look at it and you say, now the entire offseason is just really getting going. All right, so now I move on here to a little bit of football. We sit here on June 21st, waiting for training camp to begin, continuing to wait to see, if Quan Alexander gets signed for the New York Jets. This is kind of a dead time for the NFL. Not much news, not much, it's the vacation period. It's 40 days before, the real stuff begins, and that's in training camp. Once training camp begins in 40 days, or a little less than that at that point, it's full head forward, head on, all the way until, January for most teams, and hopefully, the Jets are playing deep into January, and hopefully, we get that one game in February this year. That's obviously the dream, is to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, and we all want that. But I wanted to talk about expectations for the New York Jets, because it's interesting. When you look at this Jet team this year, you have Aaron Rodgers, you obviously have Garrett Wilson, you've got Sauce Gardner. If you bring back Quinnen, or you extend Quinnen and he's here and all that good stuff, there's so much talent. This is the most talented New York Jets team we've ever seen. And there's so much excitement. And so far, all of the early signs for Aaron Rodgers have been checked off. Would he be committed? Check. Would he be welcome? Would he be good in the locker room so far? Check. Would he mentor some of the guys? Check. He's going. Would he like New York? Would he like this city? How would he react to the media? Check, check, check. He likes the city, been a good teammate, showing up to all the practices, which is obviously the most important thing. I mean, this guy's been going around New York. When the Rangers and the Knicks were in the postseason, he was going to Rangers and Knicks games. He was at some event the other night. The day after their final OTA practice, he took DJ Reed, Zach Wilson, CJ Uzama. I forget two other guys I think were there. I forget exactly who all were in the picture out to dinner. It's been great. Like, he's been loving New York, and he said it. All the signs have been great. So now you start to wonder, as he's past kind of the honeymoon phase, and once training camp begins, the honeymoon phase kind of starts to end, because that's when you legitimately start to see him throwing with all the receivers. You'll get some joint practice action. We'll see how much, if any, how much we'll really see of him in the preseason. But training camp's really where things start to happen. The pads go on, a lot more physical, a lot more competitive, all that stuff. That's when things really start to happen. You'll really get to see what the offense looks like with Aaron Rodgers. But going into that, what is the realistic expectation this year for the Jets? And I think like some of the fan base is split. Because, and I will admit too, like, I'm on board with this. We don't know how to react as New York Jets fans. Because for the first time in a very long time, we have all the media on us. Everyone's talking about, like, we're looking at Super Bowl odds. And everybody's saying how, like today, for example, the Dallas Cowboys jumped the New York Jets in Super Bowl odds. I think the Jets are plus 180 or plus 1,800 or whatever it is. And the Cowboys just jumped up to like plus 1,400. Jets are like 18 or something like that. It was one of those numbers. And everybody was like, oh, how do you feel about this? Do you agree with the Dallas Cowboys jumping the Jets? And it's funny because people are asking if you agree with the Cowboys jumping the Jets on Super Bowl odds. Like, you would have never thought we'd be talking about the Jets and the Cowboys, or people debating on if the Jets should have better Super Bowl odds than the Cowboys. I'm just bringing those two organizations up because obviously the Cowboys, big name, are in the playoffs every season, haven't won one in forever, but still, just thinking about that, like seeing people talk about the Super Bowl odds, seeing the odds for the New York Jets way up than past years. It's crazy to see that. And you don't really know how to react. But when you look at this season, you look at this talent this roster has got, you start to wonder what's a realistic expectation. Is it Super Bowl or bust? Some people feel that way. Is it you got to just get to the playoffs, snap this 12-year losing streak of not getting into the postseason? Is it winning the division? People are kind of gauging success on different levels. Some people say you got to win the division. Win the division, get to the postseason. Whatever happens from there, I'll be happy. Some people say, just get into the postseason no matter what. Whether it's getting into a wild card, whether it's winning a division, whether it's a 1 seed, whether it's whatever it is. Just get into the postseason, snap the 12-year streak. Some people say get the 1 seed. You got to get the 1 seed. You got Aaron Rodgers. Become the Dragon. Take down Kansas City. Take down Cincy. Defeat Buffalo. Win the division. Get the 1 seed in the AFC. And then it's kind of like, okay, where do you go from there? To me, at the end of the day, to consider this season a success, in my opinion, and maybe when the time comes, let's say the Jets get to the divisional round and lose. 38-35 shootout to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. Let's say that happens. Maybe in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Looking back on this year, we won 12 games. It was a success. But right now, to me, as I sit here on June 21st, I had to check the date again. I forgot. On June 21st, on this Wednesday, still, 30-plus days out from training camp. To me, the expectation, for me, what has to happen in order for me to consider this season a success would get to the AFC Championship game, get to the conference title game, in my opinion. You brought in Aaron Rodgers to win playoff games. You brought in Aaron Rodgers to make a deep playoff run. And my logic behind this is, for those that say, oh, get to the divisional round. Well, getting to the divisional round can mean one of two things. That either means you got the 1 seed in the AFC, and then you lost at home to a team that had to win a wild card game. So that tells me, okay, you got the 1 seed, but you didn't win a playoff game. Not great. At home, lose a playoff game. You want to win a playoff game with Aaron Rodgers, right? You want to do that. Getting to the divisional round as the 1 seed and losing is not great. Some people say, or it could mean, okay, you got to the wild card game, you get to the divisional round. I don't necessarily believe we brought in Aaron Rodgers to win a wild card game. We brought in Aaron Rodgers to win multiple playoff games, to go deep in the postseason. The Jets were almost a wild card team last year with the 4 different quarterbacks we had. To say, oh, we won a wild card game with Aaron Rodgers, is that really a success? I mean, sure, it depends on how you lose the divisional round. If you lose the divisional round, as I mentioned, 38-35, and it's a shootout and Kansas City wins it on a last-second field goal before, clock strikes triple zeros to go to overtime in Arrowhead, maybe you look at it differently, especially maybe if the week prior you blow out the Bills in a wild card round at home, and you get a wild card round win at home, and then you lose in a divisional round. I could see at the time being that a successful season. But to me, right now, without knowing how the playoffs are going to unfold, it's the AFC Championship game. Because to me, again, let's say they get the 1 seed in the AFC. Let's just say that. To me, I think you got to win the division. That's my opinion. They were week 9 last year, walking off that field. I was walking out of MetLife when they beat the Bills last season to get to 6-3 on the year. At that point, they were right in the heart of the division. Right there. They were in a division race last year, 9 weeks into the season. If they had an average quarterback, there's a good chance they go on and probably win that division. You put Daniel Jones on the Jets last year, there's a chance they win a division. Because they probably don't lose to Buffalo a second time. They probably win that New England game. You probably win that Vikings game. I don't know if you win the Vikings game. But either way, you're probably a 10-win team. And you probably beat Buffalo twice. And you look at the season and you probably beat New England twice. Like, you're probably an 11-win team. Just the way it is. It's a whole different season. So to me, like, you were in the division race for a good chunk of the season with Zach Wilson. There's no excuse you shouldn't be in the division race and win the division with Aaron Rodgers. So to me, it's winning the division. And it's getting the conference title game. Look, you get in as a wild card team. All right, great. Beat another wild card team. Get a win at home, which is the expectation at that point. And then it's divisional round. Boom, bring on Kansas City. You want to be the big guys. You want to dominate. You want to put your name out there. You got to beat Patrick Mahomes. You might have to go on the road and beat Joe Burrow. Go ahead and do it. You're talented enough. Get to the conference title game. Get to the conference title game against Cincy, Kansas City. Whatever it may be. However the playoffs end up unfolding. But to me, that's the expectation. Because divisional round, look, I get it. And to a certain extent, that is a successful season. And I will probably, look, we'll all be upset if the Jets lose in the playoffs and if they lose on a heartbreak to the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll all be upset. But to me, it's like we didn't bring Aaron Rodgers here to win a wild card game. We didn't do that. Like, Derek Carr could have won us a wild card game. Like, Aaron Rodgers is here to do a lot more than that. That's just me. Maybe my expectations are a little too high, but it's Aaron Rodgers, a Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, this is a guy that's been the 2 NFC Championship games in the last, 3 seasons, right? Or he went to the NFC Championship game twice in a divisional round. Like, if we can't win a wild card game or if we can't get to the AFC Championship game with Rodgers when he's done it so many times in Green Bay, again, the AFC is stacked and I get that, but right now, is winning a wild card game good enough? Like, Daniel Jones won a wild card game last year for the New York Giants on the road. Like, is winning a home wild card game, let's say against, the Steelers who barely squeak in, is that good enough? Again, it's breaking the streak, but when you look at Aaron Rodgers and you look at everything he's done, you probably expect more than that. So to me, it's conference title game is kind of where I'm looking at. And again, as the year goes on, if the Jets barely squeak into the playoffs and things maybe things aren't going as well as we expected, the expectation changes over the years. Maybe you say, hey, look, we win a wild card game this year, I'd be happy because this year was a wild season. If things take a wild turn and we barely get in, maybe you're okay with just finding a way to win a wild card game. But I mean, if we're 12-5 and you get the 1 seed in the AFC and you get a first round bye and you lose in that divisional round, I don't consider that much of a success. Like, maybe it is a success because you get the 1 seed, but is getting to the postseason and not winning a single game a success? I would tend not to say. Look, 1 seed's great. That's awesome. But you didn't bring Rodgers here to just get you to the postseason and then lose. So, that's how I see it. But maybe I'm a little over. Maybe my expectation or what I think has to happen in order for it to be success is, again, and this could change. This could change. You know, if the season ends in a divisional round, I could say, hey, this was a successful season in my opinion. Again, it's June 21st. From the outside looking in, before training camp has even started, we're still a ways out. Just from the outside so far, without seeing this team put it all together, I think you got to go to the conference title game. I think you do, especially if you get the 1 seed in the AFC. Let's just say that happens. You know, you got to win a playoff game. You can't get the 1 seed and lose. You didn't bring Rodgers here just to win you a wild card game. You know, so that's how I see it. Comment down below. What are your thoughts? What is your kind of borderline? Some people are Super Bowl or bust. And look, I don't fully disagree with that. The only reason I would kind of disagree with a little bit with that is the AFC is so loaded. To get through the title game, you're probably going to have to go through either Kansas City or Cincinnati. It's loaded. So you're going to have to go through one of those teams. Look, I'm not fully against this Super Bowl or bust narrative. Again, you brought Rodgers here to win you a championship. You know, if he in 2 years wins 2 playoff games, you know, if he in 2 years wins you 2 wild card games, you know, again, and that's so far, and I don't want to rush it, but, you know, looking back on that, you know, how would you grade that if he came here and won 2 wild card games and that was it? You know, look, that's so down the road from now, but I could see. You know, I don't fully disagree with the people that say Super Bowl or bust. Now, I'll tell you this. Next year, let's say the Jets lose in the conference title game this year. Next season, if Rodgers says, you know what, this is my final year, 1 more year, then it's Super Bowl or bust. Then it's all in, Super Bowl or bust, whatever, anything less than that's a failure, in my opinion. But right now, conference title game. Super Bowl obviously is the ultimate goal and the dream, and it's reality. It's a realistic possibility. But get to the title game, and that would be considered a successful season for the Jets, in my opinion. Not saying everything else would be a failure, but, you know, with our expectations and with the quarterback we've got and the way last season went, I don't know if I'd be completely satisfied with finding a way just winning 1 playoff game and calling it a day. I don't know if I'd be okay with that. Everyone's got different expectations. Again, as I mentioned, people think this is Super Bowl or bust. Anything less to them is a failure. And look, go and look. You went all in for a reason. So we'll see how it all ends up unfolding here for the New York Jets. Again, hopefully it unfolds and ends with a Lombardi and Rodgers going down the Canyon of Heroes with the confetti falling. That's obviously the ultimate goal. But we'll see how it all ends up playing out. All right, so we'll finish things off here, getting you ready for tonight. Yankees, Mariners, Luis Castillo on the mound, 4-5 with a 2.73 ERA for the Mariners. And for the Yankees, it's Johnny Brito. He's 3-5 with a 5.58 ERA. As for the Mets, right now they're currently down 6-4 in the top of the 4th. And that's what's going on there. So that'll do it for today's episode. I will be back here tomorrow talking all things sports again. I wanted to get into Henrik Lundqvist is in the Hall of Fame. I wanted to get into that. We'll see if anything else pops up, obviously. Talk about it all. Any other NBA news that pops up, NFL, all that good stuff. We'll have you covered here on the show. And, another good podcast in the books. Comment down below. What is your mark for the New York Jets to be counted at least as a successful season? Like, what is the bare minimum the Jets can do this year for you to count as a successful year? Is it just getting to the postseason? Is it winning the division? Is it Super Bowl or bust? Some people feel that way. Is it conference title game the way I feel? Is it divisional round? Is it just winning one playoff game, at least one, and you're okay with that? What is your baseline for the New York Jets this year to have a successful season? So comment down below your thoughts on that. You can also hit me up on Twitter at Bubbs52. And, that'll do it. As always, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.